fantastic. So let's get started. So good evening and welcome to tonight's Relevant Talk. My name is Danielle. I'm a second-year English, History, and Education student, and I'm involved with a fellowship called Power to Change here on campus at U of T. And tonight I'll be your MC. It is my pleasure to welcome you to come and hear some of the answers and insights to the question, what does it mean to be human? But before we get started, I'd like to start this talk off with a land acknowledgement. As Christian organizers of this event, we believe that all lands and all people were created by God. And we want to acknowledge that the land on which U of T lies is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations, and the Métis Nations. And we thank these First Peoples who continue to live on these lands and care for them, and whose relationships to these lands existed long before the founding of Canada. We are grateful to be able to live, learn, and play on these lands. Now, in order for you to interact with some of the dialogue that we're going to be hearing about, on the screen behind me, there will be a QR code for you to scan to access our Slido. So if possible at this time, feel free to log on to slido.com to be able to put some questions for our Q&A tonight. Please fill in the code relevant_human. So that's RELEVANT, the underscore symbol, and HUMAN. During the course of this evening, once again, please drop in any questions that you would like for our panelists and speaker to answer. And you can feel free to upvote those questions as well so that the most preferred questions can be answered first. All right, and also just to lay down some ground rules about the questions and interacting with our speakers. Please be able and attentive to listen to what people are speaking about. Please be respectful and refrain from making any personal jabs or anything like that to any of our speakers. And if you have something that you'd like to perhaps challenge with one of the speakers, please speak from your own experience so that you can express what you'd like to challenge personally. And now I'd like to welcome our speaker for this evening, John Franklin. John Franklin serves as an executive director of Imago, a Canadian national initiative based in Toronto that works in the arts and the intersections of faith and culture. Before joining Imago in 1998, he taught philosophy at Tyndale College and is currently an adjunct professor at the Divinity Faculty of Trinity College at the University of Toronto. He has curated art exhibits titled The Crossings that took place from March 2nd to April 26th of last year. Some pieces were featured around campus and some are featured here tonight. He also served as one of the several consultants for the Mystical Landscapes exhibition featured in the Art Gallery of Ontario. And there will be some newsletters which John has written at the back on the tables behind you, which you can access after this evening's talk. So now I'd like to hand this over to John Franklin.
Well, thank you. Good to be here with you this evening. I think I have to take my watch off and watch my time. Glad to have those who are present with us and those who are out there watching the live streaming. We're very pleased to have you as part of this evening and hope that it'll be both interesting and in maybe some good ways, provocative and instructive. So I want to begin with asking a question. Trying to get my watch off here, sorry. Okay. What time is it? Are we in a time that inspires great hope? Or are we in a time that feeds fear of an uncertain future? Is this a time when we know who we are? Or is it a time when we're uncertain about what it means to be human? My assignment this evening is to explore a little, and that's all you can do in 15 to 20 minutes, to explore a little how we might answer the question, what does it mean to be human? This is a very big and very important question. What I will do in the few minutes we have is to provide some characteristics that I believe are essential to our understanding of humanity. Psychologists often speak of an identity crisis. And I'm thinking particularly here of the kinds of things that many people we know and perhaps even ourselves experience. We're not sure who we are. One could say that currently in Western culture and beyond, we're experiencing an identity crisis. I'm thinking particularly of our efforts to sort out what it means to be human. It may not be too much to claim that this is the central and most urgent question of our time. Are we simply animals and nothing more? We used to ask, and now we wonder, are we simply machines? Is the brain just a sophisticated computer? Can we be programmed as if we are just another device? And how are we to understand human consciousness? What does it mean to be a person? These questions swirl around us and can leave us perplexed and uncertain about our identity as human beings. So those uncertainties, it seems to me, are not just uncertainties about our identity, but they can have an impact on our lives, making us wonder about the very meaning of human existence. For many of us, these are unsettling questions. However, they're not new questions. We've always inquired about the nature of our existence, but they take on a different form in the context of technologies. This evening provides an opportunity to pause and consider what it means to be human. In a culture where our attention spans shrink and we seem to be obsessed with being entertained, Neil Postman's book titled Amusing Ourselves to Death comes to mind. There is an endless opportunity for distraction. However, it's wise and important to take time to reflect on who we are and what, if any, significance our lives may have. And I would say that's very much what this evening is about. Are we trapped in a wasteland of ultimate meaninglessness? Or are we soon to have a diminished role in the world, outdone by the things we are creating? Or more positively, are we possibly participants in a rich and meaningful environment in which we may discover deep significance in life? And the options could be multiplied. What is clear is that we are living in a world that is constantly changing. Best-selling author Yuval Noah Harari provides a narrative describing how humanity is on a path from Homo sapiens, the subject of his first book, to Homo Deus, the subject of his second book. From mere mortals to more godlike beings. He notes that humanity's pursuit in the 21st century will be for, and I quote, immortality, bliss or happiness, and divinity. That's what our pursuit is going to be about. He writes, I quote, once technology enables us to re-engineer human minds, Homo sapiens will disappear. Human history will come to an end and a complete new kind of process will begin. And he notes that it is a process, and I quote, that people like you and me will not be able to comprehend. That's in Homo Deus, page 53. Harari is just one voice among many who are intent on alerting us to the dramatic changes already underway in our world. Whether those voices have perceived things correctly is, of course, a matter for debate. And I happen to think Harari is quite wrong in his understanding, but he carries great influence through these very, very popular books he has written. Some of you will know of Sophia, the robot, who has made a number of appearances at conferences on AI, artificial intelligence, and where she is interviewed and she responds to the questions. And way back in 2017, that's what, 5-6 years ago, Sophia was given honorary citizenship in Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about a robot here. It's interesting. It's interesting. And there's many, many other examples, I'm sure you know. However, if you read a little book by the former Archbishop of Canterbury, a fellow by the name of Rowan Williams, the little book is titled Being Human, you'll get the impression that much of the discussion about the dramatic changes in the landscape of how we understand what it is to be human, much of that discussion rests on a number of assumptions that are open to serious challenge. For my few remarks this evening, I'm drawing on that little book by Rowan Williams, and I'm going to offer brief comments on some qualities or characteristics that seem to me to be distinctive to our humanity. And they will provide a perspective, I hope, on the subject of being human. To begin with, I want to note that our humanity carries within it a great mystery. It's not something easily defined or analyzed, nor is it something measurable. And this is unsettling in a world that wants to measure everything. We live in a world that we're more interested in control and definition, more interested in measuring than in engagement with mystery. We are more interested in managing our world than in receiving it as a gift. Taken up by our ability to offer explanations, we're quite intoxicated by how good we are at that, and we are good at it. We can offer explanations, but we become impatient with mystery. We prefer to explain and define everything. One element in the mystery of our humanity is consciousness. For those who wish to inform us that the world is meaningless, there are many who wish to do that, I assure you. The meaning-making capacity of human consciousness poses a challenge. One of those people has said this: we must keep in mind when discussing consciousness that there is only one kind of stuff. So says philosopher and scientist, the late Daniel Dennett. To contend that consciousness is simply matter and operates like a machine leaves us with the question of how are we self-aware? How might a machine consider itself? Or how might a machine reflect on its activities? Dennett's claim that there is only one kind of stuff, if accepted, requires us to provide accounts of everything in terms of that one kind of stuff. By accepting that assumption, we shut out other options. If there is only matter or material reality, then, for example, there is no room for the possibility of the spiritual or the non-material, no room for that kind of reality or the mystery of it. So I want to say a bit about consciousness. Williams speaks of 4 characteristics of consciousness. Very briefly, consciousness is located. Humans have a view from somewhere, not a view from nowhere, but a view from somewhere. A context that influences our experience, your country, your culture, your family, your school, and so on. These shape our thinking and they form our understanding. So being in location allows for a specific network of relationships and connections. And that leads to the second characteristic here. Consciousness is relational. It's relational. It's capable of imagining a point of view of another, of engaging with another. It makes empathy possible. That is, to have empathy is to be able to enter into and understand something of another person's world. Thirdly, regarding consciousness, consciousness is narrative. There is a continuity in consciousness, self-connecting past and present. We have memory, and when we wake up in the morning, we don't question whether we're the same person that we were yesterday, but we acknowledge that, yes, we are the same person. So there's continuity. And fourthly, human consciousness is always bound up with language. And why that's important is that we are creatures who engage signs and symbols. We communicate, interpret, and exchange ideas and thoughts. One of the ways we do that, of course, is through the arts. Efforts to reduce consciousness to mere matter operating as a machine come across as incoherent, and I think they failed to satisfy. The claim, and here's a claim that was made by a very famous scientist, some of you will know of him and some may not. Here's the claim: the human race is just a chemical scum on the average sized planet orbiting around a very average sized star in an outer suburb of one of millions of galaxies. That was Stephen Hawking, very famous scientist, died a few years ago, but this is what he thought. This claim, it seems to me, is neither compelling nor informative. It does have some appeal, and here's the appeal I think it has. The appeal is that it makes us feel that we are on the inside. It gives us a thrill of being insiders. Oh, you think this about humans, or you think that about humans. Well, I know that we're just chemical scum, etc. So we like that sometimes, that we have an explanation. Remember, we're very interested in explanations. I recall many years ago reading a book by a scientist who challenged the widespread practice of reductionism found among some scientists. And by reductionism, well, we mean something like reducing everything to matter and saying, if you're going to explain it, you got to explain it in material terms. And as we've just noted, that if everything is only matter, one kind of stuff, then everything is understood as material, nothing but matter. This writer referred to such a practice, and I like this phrase, it's very British, nothing buttery. So there are lots of people who say, oh, it's nothing but this, oh, it's nothing but that. Oh, you're religious, oh, it's nothing but psychological. Oh, you're this, oh, it's nothing but. So nothing buttery is really quite common. Watch for it. Williams goes on to note that there is something about consciousness that leaves the question of the sacred on the table. When we consider human capacity for receptivity, our perceptions, and we receive things, and we hear other people, and we engage with other people, we have receptivity and cooperation, and we also have a sense of limit and incompleteness as human beings. And then there's our use of symbols. I think we will find that all of that is good soil for reflection on faith. When we hear about transhumanism and the wish to become more than human by way of cyber technology, we would be wise to think again about human consciousness. Be assured there will be many with a mindset of nothing buttery. You're nothing but this, nothing but that. And they'll provide accounts of consciousness that strip away all mystery. So this is my first point about humans, that we have this strange and mysterious thing called consciousness. Now to other characteristics, which I will deal with much more briefly. There's a total of 7, so here we go with number 2. In our culture, we speak a lot about individuals, and I learned from Williams that this may not be the best way to speak about humans. Think about it, and maybe after tonight, think about it. The term individual can easily give the sense that we're silos, separated, disconnected from others, concerned primarily with my individual rights, my individual preferences. And this is a common cry of our culture. My rights, my preferences, my own way. I think individualism has really had a fairly negative impact on our world. I want to suggest that we are better to think of humans as persons. The meaning of person is very different than the term individual. Person suggests that we stand in the middle of a network of relations, family, friendships, community. Being human is to be persons in relation. Our most radical punishment is solitary confinement. And why is that so radical? Because we are instinctively, as human beings, created to be in relation. It occurs to me that technology nudges us to a place of aloneness. Our isolation becomes standard and a commonly accepted practice. Some of you may know the work by Shelley Turkle, Turkle, her book, Alone Together, where she explores the impact of technology on this sense of aloneness. I think she captures what is happening through technology. Cyber places like Facebook and Twitter are said to keep us all connected, but I'm not so sure. So I want to say we are persons, not just individuals. Third, being human means having the experience of longing. And there is a great number of things on the list that we long for. It includes beauty and truth and goodness and perhaps the transcendent. It is our inclination to reach beyond ordinary life, believing that there is something more. I think this may be the heart of what the Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle were saying when they noted that all philosophy begins in wonder. I wonder. Some time ago, I received in the mail a review copy of a book titled Movies Are Prayers. And it's by a fellow named Josh Larson. Not movies and prayers, but movies are prayers. The subtitle opens a fresh perspective: how movies voice our deepest longings. The author explores a variety of ways in which human longings are expressed in film, and whether they're characterized by joy or anger or lament or praise or gratitude or disillusionment and so on. We have these longings, and films, it's an interesting way to approach a film. What's going on here? What are people longing for in this film? If we accept that our longings have a prayer-like quality to them, then it's not a big stretch for us to think that movies are prayers. Film director Martin Scorsese, a name that many of you will know, has said that everything I have done, speaking of his films, are religious. And I might add here that human longings show up not just in film, but in novels, in poetry, in images, in music, in drama, in dance. Number 4, and this is the idea that we are liturgical beings. That is to say, we are beings who are inclined to worship. We're inclined to look for something beyond ourselves, to give ourselves to. Liturgy is a term for our formal religious practices in our mosques and synagogues and churches. We commonly consider ourselves to be thinking beings, and there's some truth to that. Recall the French philosopher Descartes: I think, therefore I am. There have been challenges to this common view that we are primarily thinkers. And I don't want to be negative on the challenge of thinking. It's very important for us. But that view places reason as our identity, our identifying quality. And some are suggesting instead that we are primarily lovers, claiming that what is fundamental to our humanity is not reason and thought, but desire and affection. We have to order our desires, not just our thoughts. If one accepts this paradigm shift, it has implications for making links between technology and the human. Computers can deal with information, thinking, data, but one is not so sure what they can do about love or compassion, for example. This 4th point contends that humans are creatures of desire, a desire that goes well beyond instinct. So it's not just food and shelter, but we desire love, we desire meaning, we desire to be understood, to belong, and perhaps even to connect with the divine. A few days ago, while preparing this talk, it occurred to me that humans seem to be characterized, and this is just a subset here of what I'm talking about as liturgical beings, but humans are characterized by dependence. Not a very attractive term, I know. Perhaps the longing mentioned earlier is one way our sense of dependence is expressed. Our culture wants us to believe that we are autonomous, independent creatures, individuals, if you like, and that dependence is a weakness. We are told that if you wish to flourish as a human being, do your own thing. Don't be restricted by others. And our inclination to be worshipers is another expression of dependence. Is there something greater than me in the world? We ask. To be clear, this is very important. This is not a dependence that is a weakness, but it's one that courageously recognizes that we are relational beings and we need each other and we need God. It's a courageous gesture. So it's not weakness, this sense of dependence. There is a weak sense of dependence, but this is a strong sense, I think. Okay, number 5. Being human means having moral sensibility. The intuition that there is right and wrong. No guarantee that we will be clear about what is right and wrong. That's something we have to sort out. But one of the issues with robots in industry or in domestic settings is the matter of ethical practice. A robot can accomplish tasks, but has no capacity to discern what's right and wrong. And there are a few cases where robots have actually killed people in industry because they don't know what they're doing. We need to ask where this moral sensibility comes from. Why is it that we are drawn to express ourselves in terms of right and wrong, moral and immoral? Number 6, being human entails that we are embodied creatures and we have the capacity for creativity. We're inclined to make things, and we possess that special ability to imagine, to see possibilities, to see what might be, or how we can transform the world or represent it in new ways. The art here tonight is representing things so we see it in a new way. We carve wood, we chisel stone, we craft words into poetry, we imagine sounds and compose music. We tell stories, whether orally or in novels and films, that help us to make sense of things. We dance as an embodied means of self-expression. We paint and creatively representing the familiar in a fresh way. Through the arts, we have a means to explore the world and ourselves and come to understand each other more deeply. Creativity is found not only in the arts, but in the sciences, in business, in teaching, in sports, in raising a family, and shaping your life as a student, and so on. Perhaps in everything we do as human beings, creativity is an element. And now to number 7, my last point. Now, we all carry interpretations of life, and those interpretations differ widely. I want to end on a theological or religious note, a note that takes up the biblical narrative, which tells us that humans bear the image of God. And the qualities that I have mentioned this evening are indicators of that divine imprint on our humanity. Being human entails a call to be in relationship with the God who created us and in relationship with one another. In our world, the God of the Bible has been marginalized, set to the side, and frankly ignored. And I like to say in settings like this, what is important is not that you believe in God, but it's the God that you believe in. There are lots of options out there, and some of them are very poor in terms of what God is like. But what's really important is the God that you believe in. We want to say that the God of the Bible, having been marginalized and set to the side and ignored, we want to get on with our lives. And we want to do it on our own terms. Bringing God into the picture is seen as unnecessary intrusion, frankly disruptive. Religion restricts my freedoms. I'm not allowed to be who I want to be. Help. I want to say that's a bit of a caricature of Christianity, but we don't have time to get into that. If you want to understand what it means to be truly human, we can do no better than to look carefully at the person of Jesus. Jesus embodies values and practices we all admire, but we find difficult to live out. His commitment was to care for others, not center on himself. He was compassionate. Compassion means to suffer with. That's a challenge. He condemned oppressors, those who abused their power. He sided with the weak and the broken and offered healing and redemption to all. He manifests love in his dealings with people, and all he said and did inspired hope. He calls us out of darkness and into his light. So, for Jesus, not independence, but dependence. In this case, dependence on God. Not self-centered, but other-centered. Not greed, but generosity. Not indifference, but love. Not exclusion, but embrace. Not isolation, but community. Not condemnation, but redemption. Many of us find the stories in which we live, the ones we create for ourselves, or indeed the stories that the culture offers us, they're unsatisfying, and in many cases leave us empty. And many of us are on a search for another narrative, a story in which we can live. I want to suggest that the story that Jesus invites us into is a strong and humanizing story, one that affirms our value and enriches the meaning of our lives. It's a story that connects us to the source of all things, a loving creator who offers redemption and calls us to be transformed and inspires us to be a transforming influence in our world. So those are a few characteristics of what it means to be human. Perhaps more than you can digest, but I hope you can pull a few threads out of this that'll be valuable for your own journey. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for sharing such great points. Right now, we're going to be moving on into a time of interviews, and this interview is going to take place and being hosted by John himself. So right now, please join me in welcoming our panelists. We have Ruthia, Regis, Komi, Olaf, and last but not least, Brian Johnston. To further introduce our panelists, I'd like to give a little bit of a bio about how special they are. So Ruthia, our first panelist, is a commissioning painter based in Toronto who is represented by Roberts Gallery. She specializes in drawing and painting at York University and also studied painting in Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK. She continues her studies at Wycliffe College and the University of Toronto in a Master's of Theological Studies. Her painting looks towards abstraction using patterns found in nature, whether in shadows, placements on branches, clusters of leaves, or dapples of sunlight. For her, the process of painting and growing in spiritual disciplines is intimately intertwined. Next, Komi is a visual artist from Toronto who employs the domains of painting, street art, and illustration. He has a Master's of Architecture from Carleton University and was a finalist for the Nigerian National Art Competition. His works have gained critical acclaim over the years with his ability to employ image, metaphor, symbolism, and cultural commentary to address notions of decolonization through the lens of Afrofuturism, which is an artistic and cultural movement that explores African culture and its intersections with present and future technologies. And Brian is a practicing mixed media Indigenous artist for more than 50 years, enjoying a career of over 100 exhibitions regionally, nationally, and internationally. Brian studied fine arts at OCAD and at the University of Guelph, majoring in printmaking, drawing, and painting. In 2016, he was invited to show at the Louvre in Paris, France, along with 300 other international artists. Despite being a deafened artist, Brian has never been hindered and is in fact has excelled in broadening his artistic practice to include digital processes, blending with traditional mark making, and has used his digital approach in making his artistic endeavors. He believes artistic expression is an expression of what it means to be human. And now, John Franklin, please conduct our interview for us.
I think we need to say thank you to the pianist. I think you're going to play a little later as well, aren't you, Ian? Ian, it's great. It's great. And I think we'll hear a little more from you soon. Well, folks, I hang out with artists a lot, and it's a great delight for me to have these three friends, each of whom was part of the Crossings exhibition, which Imago hosted last year. And by the way, there are a few free catalogs at the back for any of you who may want them. So I'm going to ask you an easy question to start with, and Ruthia, I'll begin with you. What drew you to artistic expression, to being an artist?
It just started as long as I can remember, before I knew what art was, collecting things in the parking lot when I was 4 years old, I think, and just trying to make things with it. But I didn't know what art was. And then, of course, I saw paint in the kindergarten class, and then I was hooked. Yeah.
All right. Komi, can you answer that question? What drew you to artistry?
Growing up, I used to draw. I really enjoyed that. And when I was in university, I was studying architecture, and I took a painting elective with a very eccentric professor. And from the moment I started painting, it was like a shift in career, shift in thinking. And I've been exploring it ever since, yeah.
Great. Brian, how did you get started in this artistic world? What got you going?
Before I was born. I
Oh.
think I was meant to be an artist. Ever since I can remember, John, doodling, coloring books, battle scenes, soldiers and Vikings and ships. I wish my mother had kept those. They'd be worth a lot. But yeah, it's been ever present with me. I think it's been an endowment and an entrusted to me to steward very well. And so it's never left me. I haven't had to discover it. My father once said, Brian, you are the luckiest person in the world. Since all I know about you, you have always loved the arts.
That's great. Okay, here's the follow-up question. You said a little bit about each of you, about how you got started. So I'll go with you, Brian.
Like I said, I don't want to be redundant.
What keeps you going? What motivates you?
I think
to keep doing art.
I think I see it as an evolution of myself, a journey, a pathway into understanding more about who I am and how I fit in the world. And so all the work that I've done, I'm an image maker. I make images, right?
Yeah.
Not to be worshipped, but to be understood as one person in the world along with you on a journey to discover your meaning in this world. Not somebody else's meaning, your meaning. And all my work is just a collection or a record of my journey.
Komi, what keeps you motivated to do your art?
I'll say it's changed over the years.
Mhm.
Initially when I started, it was because I'd gone to the galleries and I wanted to create different images. So that was what was motivating me. As time went on, it became about money. I wanted to be able to pay my bills. And then I got a family and I wanted to, show my little boy that, he can find something within himself that he can use to explore who he is, to explore society. And, where I am right now, I find like it's a way of calming down. It's a way of going into myself and questioning things.
Ruthia, what about you? What keeps you motivated? You do a lot of painting, so something's motivating you.
Yep. These days it's about, well, it did take me a long time to accept or realize that there really was like a Christian value to making paintings. It took me a long time to get there. And then I think with the last year, I've realized that going deeply on a personal level has been what's allowed my work to communicate something of humanity. So it's interesting, like if I try to paint something that encompasses humanity, it's just going to be cheesy and wrong. But really going personally has allowed me to understand people better in general. I don't know if that makes sense, but that gets me going because I think I've just started on that side of things. So I'm motivated to see how else that develops.
Well, one of the things that seems to me an interesting link between art and faith, actually, is that both art and faith invite you into a posture of receptivity. That you have to be prepared to receive. You listen to the music, you look at the artwork, and with faith, you have to receive as well. Can you say something about seeing connections between art and spirituality, Komi, briefly?
I'll just defer with you for a second there.
Sure.
Because I find when you have faith in God, I find He will never let you down. With art, sometimes you can get let down.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like sitting in front of your canvas, expecting
course.
something to happen and it doesn't happen, you know?
Yep.
That's the only place where I would kind of differ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My point was simply that you have to be, that is, we, the audience, and you, even the creators, have to be in a posture of receptivity. An
Yeah.
idea comes to you and you receive it.
Yeah.
You don't
Being
necessarily
open.
master it.
Yeah.
Or don't receive it is right.
Yeah, I would agree with you with that, because, you know, sometimes as a practicing artist, you're just sketching what you see. So being open to things that turn up around you, or, you know, representing something in a way that you feel may be able to communicate clearly. Yeah.
Do you have a comment on this, Brian, about spirituality and art? Do they come together for you?
Well, I mean, the basis of art is self-expression and communication about who you are, and spirituality is tied to who we are, and faith unites us not only to who we are, but who made us, who created us. Of course, spirituality gets defined in many, many
Sure it
terms,
does, yes.
you know, self-fulfillment, self-identity, where the looking to self is the resourcefulness of their spirituality. But outside of self, the divine other, who inspired through his own endowment of creativity, being a creator, has given that endowment to mankind to ingest in the arts and the sciences and whatever they do, that creative aspect. So being creative and exercising that creativity is actually a connection to the spirituality of who God is as an ultimate creator.
All right, let me go to the next question. And Ruthia, maybe you can pick up on this one. It's been said that Christian faith will be an obstacle to creativity, limiting your freedom. God wants you to do this, and God wants you to do that, and so you can't be free as an artist. But others have said that Christian faith actually widens your freedom and generates creativity. So can you comment on that,
Yes.
Ruthia?
So I've been in a situation where I've experienced both. And I would say that Christianity and just a living relationship with God, where you're really on the ground experiencing things coming at you you weren't predicting, or you are not in control of, and you can't explain it in any other way, but like it lines up with the Bible stories. That's kind of weird, but and that has allowed such freedom. I mean, but I understand, like I had a really close friend who said, I don't really want to get too deep into Christianity or faith because I don't want God to call me to go on a mission trip to some third world country. Like she thought it was just going to tie her down, get rid of her freedom. But I mean, with my own experience, I can say that for sure, God is like incredibly crazy, creative. He's got plans because he knows exactly what you're like. He knows exactly what I'm like. I'm weird. My family can attest to it. And yet he has put me in situations where he's given opportunity for me to be way more free, like continually. The more I am more free with God, the more freedom I experience in my actual everyday life. So, yeah.
Okay. Komi, do you have a comment on that? About freedom, creativity? As a believer?
I would say initially, when I first started practicing my art, I was looking for freedom, but I find freedom, you know, I think it's important to have some kind of boundaries.
Yes, yes.
And once I started delving deeper into my faith, I found those boundaries enabled me to be a little bit more free within my work, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Some of you may know that Van Gogh, an artist well known in the world, he began as a Bible college student and a missionary and minister. And somehow the church didn't like the way he was operating, and he ended up out of the church. But it seems to me that in some ways he carried on a ministry, a vocation, which has had a profound impact in the world. That's Vincent van Gogh. I'm going to ask another question here. Yeah, you go
Oh,
ahead.
I can't answer that one?
Okay, you
Oh,
go ahead.
dear,
Go
I'm
ahead.
disappointed now.
Jay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. We got 4 minutes left, right? About 4 minutes? Where you go?
All right, fine.
Answer the question about freedom.
Freedom?
Yeah.
It's interesting that we always express this idea of freedom in terms of some moralistic or traditionalistic or rule-based culture. And we don't think of it in terms of the freedom of the individual single choice that every person here has. You have a choice to reject the morality, or you have a freedom to accept it. So freedom isn't those things that I've just mentioned. Freedom is your choice. Freedom is your choice. God created you uniquely, and he's given you each, myself included, a choice about all things.
Thanks.
Right, wrong, good or bad.
Yeah, right. I think we could have a very long philosophical discussion about human freedom, but let's not do that. Final question, because we're running out of time. Can art, I want each of you to say something about this, and maybe you'll begin, Brian. Can art contribute to our understanding of what it means to be human? Just for example, do you see art as a way of resisting social injustice? Or more simply, might art draw us towards the beautiful and away from the darkness of our lives and of our world? That's a couple of examples, but you can come up with your own. So I'm asking you, can art be a humanizing influence?
Of course, humans make art.
No, but does it help us to be more human?
Not necessarily.
No, okay.
No, I mean, art can be used constructively or destructively. In the destruction mode, it's basically eroding away everything that we may hold dear and, actually for our benefit. But there's a deconstructionist mentality to erode and destroy those things for whatever the reasons, because I don't like that. Well, the aesthetics of I like this or I don't like that doesn't give me the right to be a destroyer. And art can actually destroy concepts and perceptions.
It has that power.
And perspectives.
Yeah, it has that power. I would say even those that do negative art, they speak a truth about who we are as human beings.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Ruthia, humanizing influence of art, does it?
I think definitely, and it will vary from person to person. And I'm still in the process of, I hope, appreciating my humanness more and more as I try to appreciate more and more different kinds of art.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing in terms of art presents an opportunity for us to be able to give a human face to things that we may not be able to comprehend.
Yeah, that's great, Komi. Thank you. So thank you, Brian, Ruthia, and Komi. I think we go on to the next phase. I think you guys need to answer some questions now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for speaking on your artistic expression and the ways that you perceive art to intersect with humanity. Right now, we're going to go into a time of discussion with one another. For those of you who are discussion group leaders, could you please raise up your signs? And as you look around, you might see some leaders in front of you. There will also be a QR code behind me with the discussion questions if you'd like. And yeah, please feel free to flock around a discussion leader that you've seen and to really think about and ponder some of the topics that we talked about tonight. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So for the rest of this evening, we're going to once again be doing a Q&A. But before we get to that, I'd like to turn your attention to the screen behind me. We have a wonderful opportunity called Christianity Explored. If you're interested in continuing the dialogues, maybe the conversations that you had tonight about the intersections between God and art, or even some further other topics such as God and science, God and suffering. So let's just turn our attention to the video, which will play shortly.
You might be a convinced atheist, a committed Christian, or somewhere in between. Perhaps you've lots of questions to ask, or perhaps you're happier just sitting and listening. Maybe you go to church, or maybe you've never been. Whoever you are, Christianity Explored is a place for you to explore what life is all about. The Christianity Explored course is free, it's relaxed and informal, and it's run by ordinary people local to you. Some courses are held in churches with lots of people. Some are held in people's houses with just a few friends getting together. Wherever you meet, in each session, there's a chance to look at the life of Jesus for yourself and ask any questions you have. There's a short video to watch, and then a chance to chat about what you've just heard. You'll meet great people. You won't be asked to sing or pray or read out loud, and you don't need to know anything about the Bible to enjoy it. So whoever you are, come and explore. There's almost certainly a Christianity Explored course starting near you soon. So ask a Christian friend, or check out the website to find out more. You might just discover that the Christian message really is the best news you've ever heard.
And now I believe that it's time for our Q&A. So John, Komi, Ruthia, and Brian, please make your way up to the stage. Wonderful. As our speakers and panelists begin to take their seats, I'm starting to get some questions into the Slido, and please continue to upvote questions and submit them as you feel led. We will have around 15 minutes for our Q&A, and if you still have some lingering questions afterwards, our speakers and panelists will be sticking around at the end, and you can feel free to talk to them and ask them the questions that you have. All right, so now that everyone is ready and prepared, I'm going to moderate our first question. So the first question that we had on our Slido is a very simple four-letter question. Why do we exist? Any one of you can take a jab at it, start it off. Yes, sorry, the question is, why do we exist?
There's in philosophy, there is the question, why is there something and not nothing? Which is a variation on this question. To ask why is to look for a reason. I think what we have to do is acknowledge that we do exist and see how we can make it meaningful. And what we've been talking about tonight, I think, is one of the ways we make it meaningful. But the biblical story does have some answers to that. We exist to be in relationship with the Creator. I mean, that's one kind of answer, but it's not the only one. So it's a good question, but it's a very broad question and a pretty hard one to answer, at least in the time we have.
Yeah, would anyone else like to answer this question? Why do we exist?
Why do we exist? Why not? No, I mean, if you were a creator God, what would you create? Would human beings be a possibility? And if so, the question, why? Because God is creative and he creates, but he creates out of all of those attributes that John aforementioned: love, beauty, mercy, grace, truth. Those are all qualities endowed upon the Creator, who are created in his image. And so those qualities have been passed on to us. So why does God make humans? To join in that same relationship
Wonderful
of grace,
commentary.
mercy, and truth.
Thank you, Brian. Ruthia or Komi, would any of you like to answer this question?
Well, I'll say, just from my own personal experience, I'll say we exist because each and every one of us has a purpose. And I think one of our challenges is to find out what that purpose is and strive to achieve that.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So we'll move on to the next question, and maybe Ruthia, you can start us off with that. So the next question is art and our desire for beauty a compelling argument for God? So I can repeat myself. Is art and our desire for beauty a compelling argument for God?
I think it could be. but I also think anything else could be, whether it's a walk in nature or a fantastic friend you just met last week or growing relationships. I don't put art on a pedestal. It's just an expression of human experience, and God is in everything, the hard stuff, good stuff. Yeah, so I think if your mind is in the right place, it can be, you can, maybe you will be convinced.
Amazing. Any commentary on that?
Yeah, I would want to say, even the way the question is phrased, is it a compelling argument? Like in what way compelled? Logically compelled, or, and is it really an argument? It's a presence, and we are drawn by beauty, and it has a power, but you can receive it and acknowledge it as from God, or you can see it and leave God out of the picture. So in that sense, it's not compelling to draw you to the conclusion of God, but it certainly is a pointer to the reality of God, in my view.
Thank you so much. And I'll move on to the next question. I think either Komi or Brian could answer on this. So, general thoughts on AI generated art and how it will impact art in the future. If you need me to repeat the question, I can.
Everybody has their own opinion. However, based on the information that has been coming out, is that the AI generated art is based off of pre-existing art creations that have already been created by living artists. And in that regard, I feel like there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. I don't know if you can qualify that as, I think calling it AI art is a good start, but I feel it's not something that's going to stop. I think it's something that's going to grow. And like anything with technology, you know, you get on board, it doesn't matter, it's going to keep moving. But I think it's very different from the NFT craze that we had. I think this is a different kind of beast.
Yeah, and Brian, any thoughts?
So the question is, how will AI impact the future?
So, general thoughts on AI. So, your thoughts on AI and AI generated art, and how will it impact art in the future? So, yes, how will it impact art in the future?
I'm challenged in hearing. So I heard her twice, which makes it kind of confusing.
Yeah, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, just real
Yeah.
slow, please.
All right. So, general thoughts on AI generated art, and how will it impact art in the future?
Oh, how will it impact art in the future? Stephen Hawking said that the greatest fear or threat that he had human existence was that AI will self-design. So when it comes to arts, we're seeing a movement from the traditional based arts, which were often handcrafted, and we're giving it over to machines to make, for instance, those prints are machine-made prints, right? And so art under artificial intelligence will have one quality that's missing if it's totally AI, and that is what it means to be human.
Can I provide a quick footnote?
Yes, certainly.
A poet friend of mine I was with just a week ago, she was receiving essays, and she got an essay, and it was an AI generated essay. She thought, she read the first sentence and she said, "This isn't the writer, this is AI generated." And then they checked it out, and it turns out she was right. Now, how she discerned that in the first sentence, I don't know, but I think it's to Brian's point, AI somehow lacks something. It's just, it lacks, well, obviously the human.
But it'll just get
it lacks
better.
that quality you mentioned, right?
I'm
of
not confident.
consciousness.
I'm not confident it'll get better.
Yeah, what?
I think it will get better, but
But
I'm very interested as well to see how it pushes live artists, because it's not going to not impact us.
sure.
We're always responding to the environment, our context, you know, even like the art criticism. what our other art friends are doing, that all impacts us. And then if we see machines or AI create, I have already seen some of them. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But that'll push us to do something else or to go maybe deeper. I'm not sure, but I think that will be very interesting. And I don't think we need to be scared of it.
I mean, it's no question technology is challenging art practice. And it will continue as technology grows, become more and more of the process of artists thinking. And our original understanding of what art was, that it was really human based. But now it has moved where it has taken on more and more of those other technological processes. Doesn't make it less inhuman. It just means that the process has changed to allow for other possibilities as we advance in technology and engineering. But it will never, never displace the human spirit, because that is the essence of art. It's not the technology.
Komi, any last
Computer
thoughts?
generated art will always lack that human capacity.
The only thing I was just going to say in regards to that is with the AI generated art, the person behind the phone or the computer needs to think of something and put that input into it to get the art. So I think in terms of where is it going, because whatever you can imagine, you can put into it and to give you back an output. And I think as that keeps on getting more and more developed, people's imaginations, I think are going to go wild as well too.
Great, thank you so much. So we have around 5 more minutes of this Q&A, and so we're just going to answer around 2 more questions. So the second last question is, how did you discover your art style or passion? And did your faith influence your art? So I think maybe 2 people can speak on this, and we'll move on to the last question. And I can repeat the question. How did you discover your art style or passion? And did your faith influence your art?
My answer is very practical. So a lot of even the medium that I chose, my art style, it was all kind of impacted by my everyday life. So having little kids, I didn't want fumes. So I didn't do oil, I did acrylic because it's easier to clean up. And then the style developed because I didn't learn painting skills at York. It was just more about the process and not about actual skills. So then after I graduated, I had to go back to doing realistic art because I felt like the foundation was missing. And then I'm still in a process of, I think, trying to find my style, even though others can tell if it's me. But yeah, it's not, I don't think it's a controlled, for me, it's not like I whip up some formula that's going to be amazing and then I just execute it. It's so not about that. And I'm always open to the style changing as I paint. But then I finish and it didn't change that much, but still have to think that way.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. Komi, Brian.
I'll say it's an organic process as well too. Like generating a style is also something that artists, you see artists go through different phases. They have a mature phase, they have a amateur phase, and all of those things. So for me, I started working in acrylic. I was comfortable in acrylic, and I tried to experiment with abstracts and stuff. But I found that representational work was something that I felt showed who I was, and I was able to play around within that range. In terms of spirituality, there were times when I felt like being led by the Spirit, and there are times when it was just kind of a work thing, in front of the canvas, like a 9-to-5 kind of vibe. And there were times when I felt it like a spiritual kind of thing.
And actually, Brian, feel free to also speak on this question. I can repeat. So how did you discover your art style or passion? And did your faith influence your art?
How did what? Sorry?
How did you discover your art style or passion? And did your faith influence your art?
How did I discover my style?
Yes, the style.
And how it has influenced my faith. I used to tell students
Could you please speak into the mic?
Oh,
Thank
I
you.
used to tell students, sorry, thanks. You're so compassionate. I used to tell the students, because they were all about, finding their style. But sir, what about my style? I said, I would just generally say, forget your style. I said, you work hard enough, the style will find you. You don't have to worry about looking for it. It will be defined by who you are. So how has my pursuit of style, I don't know, it just came naturally. I don't go looking for it. I've developed a number of different types of expression. The three broad categories, sorry, I'm taking a little while, three broad categories in which you can define all art is non-objective, representational, and symbolic. So I have tried to experiment with all three of those. I didn't want to be tied down simply to representation or simply to the symbolic or simply to the non-objective, which includes your performance art, your conceptual art, your abstract art, all those non-objective things, okay? So I'm really free and open to challenge myself to experiment through a range of different expressions. How has it impacted my faith, or how has it helped me shape what I believe today? I can only say that in discovering different means of expressing the one thing that is really important to me, and that is my relationship with God, is through these different means. And it comes out in different ways with different emphasis and different expressions, but it all amounts to the same thing, is that Christ is the very center of my worldview and everything I do.
Thank you so much for your answer. And let us all just take some time right now to thank Ruthia, Komi, Brian, and John for answering the questions for our Q&A. All right. And as we come to a close this evening, as it rounds out to 9 p.m., I just want to remind you once again, we do have Christianity Explored open and available to you, which you can actually get in contact with through our feedback form. And if you haven't filled out the feedback form completely, I do invite you to take some time to do that for us later this evening or once you get home. And yeah, so pretty well, this is the end of our event. Please take note that there are some slight snacks and refreshments at the back of our venue tonight. Please take that as you go on the way out. We will also have a few more minutes to have our artists around to explain their art, look at the pieces, really contemplate the meaning between what it means to be a human being and how do we see human beings and our sense of self reflected in artistic expression. So thank you so much. Have a great evening, and it was a pleasure to be with you all.